Hey guys, it's Emily and I'm back with another speed build. This one was inspired by, once again, the Rethasim fantasy save. I have participated in several of the worlds that she is renovating, and this one is Bewitchment Bay that has renovated Brindleton Bay. Mostly based on witches and warlocks and wizards and that type of thing. And so I knew I wanted to have a dragon. That was kind of my primary focus of this. I wanted to have a dragon sitting on a castle. And as you saw in the opening sequence, we were able to accomplish that with the tool mod, which I use a lot. Again, you don't need that in your build in order to have this lot render properly. It's just something builders use, but because the items are already in the game doesn't recognize them as custom content. It just recognizes them as the normal object. So that is the awesome thing about using that mod as a builder. So if you download this into your game, you're going to see the dragon render just perfectly, and that's if you have the move objects on, of course. That is the one caveat, is that we need to have that move objects on. So this fantasy save that she has put together has been a real huge source of inspiration for me to kind of get my imagination going. And so I knew I wanted to have this kind of castle build. I wanted to use some terrain tools. I think this is kind of where I feel most comfortable, is doing these kind of builds. I just can kind of let my imagination run wild and do the things that I think that look nice. And so I had a lot of fun with this, and that's, I think, why I keep going back and participating in that save, is that it really is kind of a springboard for my creativity. Again, I knew it was going to have this sort of magical witchy feel, and so I wanted to incorporate those crystals. So you see, I put those off to the side because I know eventually, once I get to kind of the point where I want them, I'm going to be trying to use them. Initially, I was going to try and sink them down into the landscaping and have kind of these crystals coming out of that landscaping, but you'll see here in a little bit that I actually use some rocks to kind of make that surrounding area feel more, I guess like it's mountainous, or coming out of the natural area a little bit more, and then we kind of incorporate the crystals with that. The dragon was really tricky. He's not the most beautiful dragon, but I'm okay with that. I definitely got sick of trying to rotate things. If you haven't used Tool, it can be very frustrating. You have to, it has a lot of math, frankly, like there's a lot of math involved. And I'm so thankful for the tool, but at times it definitely is challenging to use, particularly when you're trying to rotate a bunch of items. If it's just one or two things, I don't usually have an issue with that, and it's no big deal, but trying to get everything to line up just so to create that dragon shape was really tricky and very time consuming. I am pleased with the way it looked in the end. I really was trying to hoping that I could cover the whole dragon in the scales that come with Island Living. They are some seashells that come in, I think, pink and blue, and at one point I had created a room full of these blue seashells that I was hoping to layer the entire dragon with, but it clearly was obvious that when I started trying to do that it would take me forever, and I just wasn't willing to put that amount of work into it. I know there's some of you out there who do put that amount of work into trying to figure out how to get Tool to rotate things just so, but it was not for my patience. I want to make sure that I'm enjoying building when I do my builds, and that would have definitely taken the enjoyment out of it for me. So I just kept it simple. We do see I do use some of that. I want to say the main shape is that circular kind of pipe shape. I want to say that comes from Discovery University. That is kind of the main body how I created. And, you know, without using those shells to cover it, you do see that kind of concrete look. But we kind of tried to use some things to disguise it a little bit. And the wings are a bat. I think the bat is in Debug from Vampires. And so, you know, just kind of trying to rotate these items in ways that kind of make a shape of a dragon. Definitely was very tricky. And then, you know, once I placed these rocks here, I love that pattern that's on the wall, that kind of rock castle-y, but I wanted to also have contrast, so I do end up changing that up. Here you see I blew up the bat, and I used a dog initially. I can't remember, I think I might remove that, but kind of as the body shape as kind of a starting point. And then yes, again, we're just using that tool to kind of rotate to get the kind of angle I want and the shape I want. And then here, I actually use this fish. That is the basis of the face and where we get our eyeballs from, and you know, some of the fins. And again, trying to use that tool to really try to, the tool mod, to envision what I want. And you know, it's kind of just a matter of trying things and, you know, seeing if you could get things to the way that you like it. So, you know, it's like I said, normally when you're just rotating things a little bit, it's not as big of a deal. It's not as much of a challenge to use this mod. But when you're doing a lot, when you're trying to create a whole being out of using this mod, I found it much more challenging. So here I'm just trying to create a leg, I believe. Again, it was just a matter of trying things out. Here's that object I was talking about that we end up using as the primary body structure. You know, rotating each of these to try and get it to look kind of like a neck or kind of like a tail was really challenging and time consuming. And then to try to think about layering those scales or that seashell on top of it. You know, I think it would have looked gorgeous and stunning and amazing, but it was not for my patience. Again, I want to be enjoying these builds. I do speed builds because they're a positive thing for me. I really enjoy doing them. And once we get to that level of detail and frustration with trying to use those tools, such as tool, then it goes into the realm of something that I'm not going to enjoy. And as cool as it would look, I just wasn't willing to do that. So, you know, if anybody else who really loves to kind of sit there and putz with the angles and everything wants to cover this dragon in those blue seashells, then, you know, more power to them. I think it would look so amazing, but not for me, not for me. Just to let you know, guys, that was my original vision. I just wasn't enjoying trying that. The tricky thing about those shells is that the way you would think they rotate isn't the way that they rotate. So I found that really, there's some objects like that, so I found that really challenging on top of the amount that I was going to need to do it. So a lot of this is just rotating things slightly to try and get the shape that I want. You see I kind of check back and forth to see that everything is lining up properly. Sometimes you could turn something and it will look correct from one angle, but then you bring it over and, you know, rotate and it looks completely different, like everything's misaligned. So you definitely have to check a lot as you're doing this. I knew I wanted to have this nice long like a dragon head poking out over the whole castle and then kind of the tail wrapping around. So I kind of knew the shape that I wanted from an artistic point of view, but then again trying to use that tool mod to create the actual being, that was definitely something that I've never tried before. So it was a lot of fun in that way. It's something new, something I haven't tried. And you'll see here for those front legs, that's just an object from Island Living. It's a wall hanging, and I've just sized it up, you know, so that it would fit where the legs would go, and then that we use that pretty much through the decoration of the whole thing. So like you see, I put those that decoration on the wings. It's going to go up the side of the entire neck. It frames out the face here, like that's how we kind of create the snout and the jaw. It's all with that object. And I thought about bringing more objects in to kind of add some variety, but I really like the fact that it's all kind of the same tone. You know, that fish there is kind of the same tone as the wall object, and so it felt to me like it really would go together. And then the contrast of the blue, I thought, you know, it would have kind of these decorative kind of scales, and those fins and stuff are that one color. And to me, in my mind, it would make sense that it would have that kind of two-tone blue and then the kind of off-white. Was kind of originally what I was thinking. And when we posted this to the gallery, there are two versions. The first version, there's nothing in the castle. You could furnish it how you want. As it's posted, the first version, there's no way to access. Really, my focus was the building, the landscaping, the dragon. But I have a second version, which is the version I will link below, that you can download, that has access, that has everything. You know, all the areas have little tasking areas for your Sims. We had to get creative because that terrain is so steep, and so Sims normally can't navigate it. And those stairs, even though they look like they should be you know, traversable by your Sims, it's actually not, because some of those rock footprints are actually in the way. So really it's just for looks. So what I ended up doing was creating a basement. So if you've looked at any of my builds before, this is a trick I have done before, where you create all the pathways, the hallways in the basement, and then either stairs or ladders up. In this case, I did use ladders just because those round rooms are, you know, pretty small, and so I didn't want to use up so much of the floor space using a staircase. So if we go down below, you'll see just this kind of tunnel of different areas with stairs up in order to access those rooms. So if you're Sims, if you're using this as an actual build to play in your game, your Sims might get a little exhausted going from room to room. So that's the one warning I will give you all, is that it is usable, but it's going to take a lot out of your Sims going from room to room. I do enjoy these fantasy save builds because, again, it brings out my imagination, but for the most part, I don't have to worry about if it's functional. Of course, I always do worry about if it's functional, just because to me, there's no point in building it if you can't actually put it in your game and use it. And so that is why I made two versions of this, is that, you know, I wanted to have in the end, I wanted to have a functional version because that is important to me. And so we made it work. We definitely made it work eventually. Here you'll see I'm just using that same object. Again, that tool mod allows you to rotate things in pretty much unlimited directions. And so trying to create those hind legs of him just kind of perching. And so we have the one kind of foot on the ground, but then his hip maybe is up higher. So again, you know, just trying to get what's in my head and the vision of how the shape I want it to be, and then using that mod to kind of really flesh it out, so to speak, and make it feel and look like a dinosaur, a dragon, not a dinosaur. And so there, for the little foot, we are using that object shrunken down really small, and then the claws are actually a debug alien item, I believe, like a stun ray or something. I can't remember exactly which object, but it's its own little object that I added on there to put the claws on. So I looked at SatiSim, I think is the name. I will put the link for her dragon below. She was largely the inspiration for this. She made an incredible dragon using the tool mod. She makes incredible builds using the tool mod. And so she was kind of the inspiration for this. A little bit, and she had utilized those claws, and so I thought that was just brilliant and a nice little touch. So definitely added that into my build here. Now we're just creating the tail. Here you'll see where I was mentioning earlier that I wanted to have a higher contrast between those rocks below and then the building, and so I end up going with a darker rock just because I again wanted it to stand out. And I wanted to use those Realm of Magic windows just because this is for witches. You know, I was kind of thinking a witch and her dragon familiar lived in this area. This is a Batu item that I have rotated. It normally is a wall hanging, but I wanted to have kind of a turret look, and that's no real easy way to do that as in game, to kind of have these inverted roofs that, you know, are larger on the top than on the bottom. I really haven't seen anyone do that much. There's one instance that I've seen it with an in-game that you don't have to use a cheat for, but I tried to do it on these roofs and I couldn't get it to look correct. So we ended up just using the tool mod to rotate this Batu item. And then here you'll see me, what I intend to do here is raise those up so that it's a wall. So it's like a turret is what I'm trying to create. And I use the rug to just kind of guide me to make sure that my circle is fairly uniform. That is a Kate Emerald trick I saw, and many other people use it now. So that's kind of how you make sure that you're staying on point with your shapes, especially circles can be tricky. So I'm creating that as a room below so that I can multiply or, you know, duplicate it in several different areas, because I know at the top of several turrets I want to have this. So by doing it on a room like this, I'm able to just quickly duplicate it. And so that's why I'm doing it kind of off and below like this. And you'll see here I deleted the rug. I'm not sure why I deleted the Batu item. Oh, because that was a frame of reference. So I had already put the Batu items up above, and then we just, again, if you see there, I'm just placing it up there. We're using tool mod to slide it over into the exact right position and then the exact right height, because each of these is a different height. So I ended up doing 2 layers. We enlarged that coffee table from Eco Lifestyle to kind of create a floor, a false floor, if you will. And then here again, to achieve that turret look, I'm just duplicating and then raising that up using the tool mod. So we have that turret look in several areas, and then you know, I think there's some areas that have just that cone roof. So I wanted to have a couple of different looks going on and kind of peppering them out through each of the buildings. Here is adding the dragon tailed, I guess the dragon tailed, what's the word for that? Scales, some interest, you know, kind of architectural interest, keeping with that color scheme again. It was really kind of fun to try and imagine the way that the tail twisted and turned around this building and trying to, you know, make it feel like it has some movement. I really enjoyed that, and just kind of, you know, looking back and forth to see, okay, now if it was a real tail, how would it wrap around? Alright, so here you'll see is where I'm trying to add the floor below, I believe. Yes, so we have to create a layer below, because if you recall, this is actually the second floor. So I had to create the first floor, and I just used the basement tool, and then we go down to the basement and add that basement. So this is an old-fashioned stove off of created by SatiSim. She does a lot of amazing kind of old-fashioned builds, and so we just plunked a couple of her items in the stove and then the experimenting table you'll see a little bit later. This is a trick that I actually learned from Twisted Mexi, who is the creator of Tool, that if you place an object, like say that fridge there, that's the one I want to be usable, and if you raise an object up from the floor below, it won't interfere. So those boxes are covering up a counter and a fridge, but because those boxes are on the floor below and raised up, the Sims just don't see them. It doesn't register for them. And so you're able to create some things that have custom looks or that are covered, but are still functional because it basically just doesn't register for the Sim. So that is a super good trick from watching the tutorial of the tool tutorial that I watched from Twisted Mexi. We do have a bed, we do have a bathroom, we have that kitchen area, we have a skilling area. I want to say that has like a card table. Again, I didn't go with a bunch of modern, computers and such. So if you were playing in this and you need a computer pretty much to function in The Sims, since we don't have newspapers or things like that, stores, grocery store. So you could add that if you wanted to, but I really try to keep with the old time feel, and so we don't have a lot of those modern items. It's just kind of outfitted with, these tapestries and this, swords and kind of old-fashioned objects was the look I was going for. And so here is, again, that Realm of Magic item. I really wanted to stick with that theme. We have candle making, and I guess, painting, and again, the cards, chess, those kinds of things. So there are a lot of skilling items. This is completely functional. Your Sims can have fun here. They can cook here. They can sleep here. They can use the bathroom here. So it is fully functional, and it is play tested. That was, again, really important to me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build and this narration, and I will catch you guys next time. I hope you take care and are well.